As you have probably seen from the title, this video is about Rick Flag, both junior and senior, as written by James Gunn in the new DC universe, and I have a lot to say. While you can skip to this timestamp if you want to get straight into it, I do want to get a few things out of the way. Hello everyone, I haven't been on YouTube in years. Used to be a small YouTuber that got bullied off social media, and I was only 13. So I'm heading into this raw and anxious, as I'm finally making a video I've been itching to make for the past few weeks. First off, I'm no Zack Snyder fan or James Gunn fan. This isn't a Snyder versus Gunn thing. This is just about James Gunn's writing within DC. Second, I'm not super comic literate, and I haven't seen all of James Gunn's work. I need to rewatch the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, and I've yet to watch its sequels. Third, this video is focused on critiques. I shall have scattered praises, but I'm mostly here to talk about the flaws, because flaws matter. If we ignore them, we're doomed to repeat them across other media. I've been writing stories since I was a kid, and character integrity has always mattered to me more than spectacle. So here we are. And for those thinking, well, what would you have done differently? I'll be sharing my version of a better Rick Flag story at the end, so stick around. Also, I'm no native English speaker. I am from the Balkans, Bosnia and Herzegovina. And while all of the thoughts and opinions in this video are 100% my own, I did need to use ChatGPT to refine my grammar, to make it more polished and less scattered, since that's just how I talk naturally. I wanted to be transparent about my usage of AI, since I know that it's a very controversial topic. Anyways, let's get straight into the video. In the Suicide Squad 2021, Swedish-American actor Joel Kinnaman reprises his role as Rick Flag Jr. from the 2016 film. This time, he plays a more stoic but still polite, kind-hearted and morally grounded version of the character. Sure, it's not exactly comic accurate, but comic accuracy doesn't matter as much as character integrity. Despite finding himself in a cast full of quirky characters, Rick is one of the most lovable ones. He's a fan favorite for a reason, though I'd argue Joel Kinnaman's performance and looks play a huge role in that. But despite what people say, he's not the heart of the team. That role, it clearly belongs to Ratcatcher 2, aka Cleo. Even though we never get her exact age, it's obvious she's very young. She's the one who calms King Shark and convinces him not to eat everyone alive. She's the one who connects with Abner, Polka Dot Man, and encourages Bloodsport, or Robert, to open up emotionally. Those core emotional glue moments are hers, not Rick's. Rick is kind, warm, but he's not the soul of the team. He's just the guy who's decent to everyone. But then there's that scene. Harley has just escaped captivity on her own, because of course she did, and it was glorious. And she stumbles upon Rick and Bloodsport, who were mid-rescue, and when she finds out Rick came back for her, she hugs him, genuinely, gratefully. She's been through hell her whole life. She's just escaped another, and here's a man who tried saving her, so of course she's going to be grateful, even in her own chaotic way. But Rick, he doesn't hug her back. He stiffens, cringes, doesn't even try to meet her halfway emotionally. It's played off like a joke. Haha, Harley's too much to handle. But it's a scene that just feels off, wrong. Because not only has Rick known Harley for at least 5 years, but he also thought she was dead after the beach massacre. They're teammates, friends. He should be relieved, even overjoyed that she's alive, after his entire Team 1 got massacred. Instead, he treats her like a weird cousin you avoid at family gatherings. And here's the kicker. Just about 15 minutes earlier in the bar scene, Rick was hugging Bloodsport, ruffling Abner's hair, and laughing with the team. So no, this isn't just soldier with the walls up. Rick can be warm. He has emotional range. He just doesn't show it to Harley even when she clearly needs it. And that's not a character flaw, it's a writing flaw. James Gunn has a bad habit of undercutting emotional moments for the sake of a quick gag. And in this case, that joke cost us a potentially beautiful reunion, where Harley could have been met with unconditional affection, serving as a contrast to the horrors she just went through. However, Rick is cold, distant, and it comes off as ignorant, heartless, and soulless. It's even worse when you consider he must be traumatized after the beach massacre, thinking that he's the only survivor. This should have been a powerful moment, but no, we're just given walls that didn't exist 15 minutes earlier. Rick Flag Jr. discovers the truth behind Project Starfish, that it's a US-funded Black Ops project involving illegal experimentation, even on children. He snaps, wishing to expose everything to the press, tired of covering up the government's dirty little secrets. It's framed as a heroic moment, the noble soldier finally drawing a line. Then enters Peacemaker, Christopher Smith. He confronts Rick, trying to stop him from going public. At face value, and according to how the movie frames it, this paints Peacemaker as the cold, brainwashed enforcer, someone who blindly follows orders and protects corrupt systems. Rick is set up as the noble hero, and Peacemaker as the corrupt antagonist. But, unfortunately, it's not that simple. And the more you look at it, the more it all falls apart. First off, let's talk about Rick's supposed morality. It's hypocritical, really. This is the same Rick who suddenly draws the line at child experimentation, but stood silent when Amanda Waller blackmailed Bloodsport using his own daughter. He also doesn't speak up about Ratcatcher 2, a vulnerable young woman, still basically a child emotionally, who's clearly not equipped for combat. The main villain, the Thinker, even calls her a child. Rick doesn't blink. He's also leading Polka Dot Man, Abner, a man visibly suffering from trauma, delusions, and suicidal ideation, into a war zone without a second thought. Everywhere. Not even a flicker of empathy. So when he suddenly becomes morally enraged about what Starro did to innocent people, it just doesn't feel consistent. It's like it came out of nowhere. And honestly, all of this could have been completely fixed with just a few small changes to Rick's dialogue throughout the movie. Imagine if earlier in the film, Rick had taken a moment to express discomfort over Amanda Waller using children to further her goals. A line to Robert, something like, "I hate that Waller dragged your daughter into this. That is not how we're supposed to operate." Or pulling Abner aside at some point, saying, "I know you're not okay, man. I can see it. But I need you to stick with me. You matter more than you think." That would have deepened his empathy. Even just a quick aside to the team like, "Keep an eye on Ratcatcher too. She's tough, but she's young. I don't want her caught in the crossfire." Boom. Right there, you're showing his true sense of duty, not just as a soldier, but as a protector. And maybe the most powerful thing they could have done? Give him a line, just one, about how leading Task Force X has broken him. Something like, "I've watched too many people die in missions like this. I used to think we were making a difference. Now I'm not sure we're anything but a cleanup crew for the government's conscience." That would have made his turn against Argus and Project Starfish feel like the natural conclusion to a long, painful journey, not just a sudden burst of righteous fury. It's not that his feelings are invalid, it's that they are underwritten, and that's a shame. It's funny how Rick literally admits everyone is disposable to Waller. He knows the game, he's not some naive moral soldier. But suddenly, when Chris, A guy with a literal bomb in his head is begging him not to leak the files, perhaps in fear of Waller's retaliation. Rick just flips and throws hands? Not even a second to stop and think, wait, is this man fighting me out of brainwashed loyalty or actual panic for his own life? And I'm supposed to believe, or we're supposed to believe, that Rick Flag Jr., the level-headed, tactically brilliant colonel, wouldn't take that into account? He only gets to be sweet, logical, and compassionate when the plot needs him to be. And the second James Gunn needs a twist, suddenly Rick is reckless and hot-headed for no reason. Let's talk about the actual stakes, because the movie doesn't make them clear. It refuses to. But according to James Gunn in interviews, Peacemaker was right. He didn't want to kill Rick. He just wanted Rick to stand down and put the hard drive back, begging him to not have to kill him. Because exposing Project Starfish wouldn't just damage the US government. It would destabilize the world, cause massive international violence, maybe even war. And the movie gives us none of that context. It doesn't show Peacemaker finding that evidence. It doesn't let us understand the weight of the decisions. It just tells us Rick good, Peacemaker bad. But if what James Gunn says is true, and Peacemaker understood that exposing Starro's origin could spark global chaos, then he wasn't a villain. He was trying to prevent a catastrophe. And here's something I really want to clear up. A lot of people defend this sudden moral outburst from Rick by saying, well, it's comic accurate. Rick Flag disobeys orders in the comics too, for moral reasons. But what they don't realize is, comic Rick is not Gunn Rick. They are not the same man. Comic Rick was a volatile, deeply unstable character. He hated criminals, despised Task Force X, and had constant clashes with Waller. She practically had to babysit him. This man was arrogant, aggressive, and even tried to murder a US senator to prevent exposure of TKX. He wasn't a good man. He was a broken soldier clinging to a crumbling sense of control. Gunn Rick is not the same, and bringing up a darker version of his character doesn't justify this random personality shift. And what about Corto Maltese? Rick Flag Jr., a US colonel, willingly sides with Sol Soria's resistance and fights against the Corto Maltese regime. That's not just a spontaneous feel-good decision. That's a military betrayal of another country's sovereignty and a major act of political interference. Now imagine this. He wishes to expose the country that he wishes to save by telling the world that the previous regime experimented on civilians with alien technology for the US government. What kind of backfire would that cause? Would burn the whole country down, and Rick isn't even thinking about it. How is that? Completely in character. It's wildly irresponsible. It's not a heroic stand, it's reckless writing. And that brings us to the biggest problem, Rick's death. It's framed as a noble sacrifice. He died trying to do the right thing. But if you even scratch the surface, it doesn't hold up. It doesn't track. His actions weren't grounded in consistent moral logic. They weren't built up emotionally. They feel impulsive, almost egotistical, like he wanted to be the hero all of a sudden. But the movie never gave us a proper foundation for that arc. It's contradictory writing. It asks you to root for Rick because he's the nice guy. But it never dares explore his blind spots or his moral inconsistency. It asks you to hate Peacemaker for doing what, in context, might have actually been the smarter move. And the fandom, most of them bought it. They talk about Rick like he was the tragic martyr. But honestly, he wasn't. At best, he was a good man making a short-sighted decision. At worst, He was another soldier trying to clean his conscience too late. The cost of everything. Even the fight scene is a complete disaster. Right after Chris lands his first solid kick, Rick is on the ground, completely vulnerable, groaning in pain. Neither of them had weapons at this point. All Chris had to do was mount him, use his body weight, and snap his wrist or forearm. This would have made him to drop the drive. Clean, efficient, non-lethal. He's a trained killer. He would know that. But instead, the fight is drawn out into this dramatic sequence that forces them to reach a fatal conclusion. And not just that, it becomes unrealistically fatal. Let's talk about that porcelain shard. When you zoom in, you don't see the shard there. It only magically materializes once Chris needs it. It's a straight-up Deus Ex Machina. It's giving Aang versus Fire Lord Ozai. Oh yeah, I went there. And again, Chris didn't want to kill Rick. Even in that last moment, he had options. He could have stabbed Rick anywhere else. The shoulder, the hip, into his arm. He's trained. He knows how to disable without killing. He knows the anatomy. And Rick was in a fully exposed position. Plus, he was concussed. His entire torso was tense and engaged from the chokehold. A few jabs to the ribs or to his sides would have caused immediate reflexive weakness, enough to disarm or roll him over. Even if the shard wasn't there, Chris still had a few ways to win without a death. He had reach, he had positioning, he had skill. He didn't need to kill him, and he didn't want to. But the scene is written like death was the only outcome, like tragedy was the only path forward. And for that to work, the script has to pretend that none of Chris's skills or basic tactical sense exist anymore. It's not tragedy. It's fiction bending backwards to make death feel poetic. It's not heartbreaking. It's just lazy. And now, let's talk about that line.
What a joke. Hold up.
Excuse me, Richard Bill Flagg Jr.? Where exactly did that line come from? Oh, this line has been treated by the fandom like it's some kind of Shakespearean death monologue. Like it belongs right up there with "I'm tired, boss" from The Green Mile. But here's the problem. It's not that deep at all. There is no real emotional foundation for that line to carry any kind of weight. These two characters, Rick Flag Jr. and Peacemaker, barely spoke the entire movie. No tension, no trust, no chemistry, no clashing, no history. Just this sudden moral standoff manufactured in the last 5 minutes. And let's remember, Peacemaker didn't want to kill Rick. He was actively trying to prevent a global disaster. I mean, again, even according to James Gunn himself, if that drive got out, it would have caused international war and countless deaths. So why is Rick calling him the joke? Chris was trying to save the world in his own flawed, messed up, conflicted way. Meanwhile, Rick refuses to engage, refuses to de-escalate, refuses to even acknowledge the danger that Chris is warning him about. He doesn't try bargaining, he doesn't try reasoning, he just shouts about the experimented on children and throws hands. And when it goes south, when he dies, he gets to leave the scene with this line that makes him look like the noble martyr and Peacemaker the senseless killer. The movie even frames it that way, but when you actually look at it with any narrative logic, this whole escalation was Rick's fault. He had no counter-argument. He didn't question the drive's consequences. He didn't think ahead. He just wanted to feel like he was doing the right thing, and then threw a punch at someone trying to stop a war. So this "what a joke" line, it's not poetic, it's not heartbreaking, it's not even earned. It's just petty. It's a final jab to protect Rick's own ego, a character beat that sounds emotional on paper but collapses under any scrutiny. The fact that so many fans and critics alike treat this line like a gut punch, it proves how easily we're trained to feel what the scene wants us to feel, even when the writing hasn't earned it. Emotion isn't the same thing as meaning. Hurt isn't the same thing as depth. The worst part about Rick Flag's death isn't the death itself. It's that it meant nothing. His death isn't a pivot point for the story, not something that reshapes the team's purpose or fractures their trust in Waller, or even causes an emotional reckoning. Instead, it's used rather transparently to do three things. Number one, solidify Cleo as the true heart of the team. 2. Crown Bloodsport as the new leader, even though that role never quite fit him naturally. And 3. Set up Peacemaker for an unearned redemption arc in his spin-off show. Now don't get me wrong, I love John Cena, and I love John Cena as Peacemaker. I think he's brilliant, but this redemption arc was not seated properly. It wasn't earned, it was inserted. And Rick's death was the narrative shortcut to make it justified. Peacemaker in the comics isn't haunted because he killed one good man. He's haunted by war, by bad men, by the faces of all of those he's ever killed, innocent or not. That's what drives his spiral and stability, his arc. Killing Rick wasn't necessary for Chris's growth, and the show doesn't even give him the consequences you would expect to for killing him.
Flag. Flag was right. Peacemaker. What a joke.
Buddy?
What the fuck?
You'd think that John or Amelia would be angry at Chris and have tension with him over killing Rick Flag Jr., since they were seemingly friends with him according to a deleted scene in the Suicide Squad movie.
It's on your shirt. Well, it looks like a gang of clowns.
Shit all over you.
A gang of clowns! Oh my god! Flag! What is that? Your face right now, Waller!
Alright, so let me get this.
No grief, no guilt, and they most certainly don't feel conflict over being buddy-buddy with the guy who killed Rick.
It's Waller either.
You don't know her like I do. I saw Waller knowingly sacrifice troops, including a colonel in the United States Army, to meet her objective.
Same with Bloodsport again. He was perfectly fine as the grumpy, reluctant dad figure who slowly realized he cared more than he let on. It was beautiful. I loved Idris Elba's performance. All of us did. And that was enough. He didn't need to become the team's new commander. That torch should have stayed with Rick. Rick should have been the one to lead the charge against Starro, not Robert. This is not like Metal Gear Solid 3, where the boss sacrifices herself, and that sacrifice shapes the entire series. Oh yeah, I went there. No, this is more like, hey, let's kill off this guy so these other characters can shine. And then what happens after Rick dies? Practically nothing. There's a short moment, and that's it. That's literally it.
Flag was my friend.
Mine too.
There's no moment of grief, no pause, no wait. The movie jumps back into quirky jokes and kaiju action, which, by the way, was visually stunning and really fun, but emotionally, it's hollow. It skips the impact his death should have had. Why? Because the movie wants to end on a high. Not a reflective, bittersweet note. Just a fun, punchy, crowd-pleasing one. And that's fine, if you're not trying to pretend like you just gave us a tragic, powerful death. Even Harley's Javelin had more of a character arc than Rick Flag ever did. And that's when you know you have a problem. Even Amanda Waller doesn't seem fazed by it. He was the man who led TKX for years. But the truth is, Rick Flag didn't matter to Peacemaker, didn't matter to Waller, didn't matter to Bloodsport, who anyways got heated into the void after the movie ended. So what was even the point of his leadership arc? He didn't matter to John or Amelia, and in the end, he didn't even matter to the story. And that's what hurts the most. Fast forward to December 2024, over 3 years since the Suicide Squad, and James Gunn releases Creature Commandos, featuring Rick Flag Sr., the father of the man killed for a hard drive no one even mourned properly. And right out of the gate, we're given a line from Waller.
Sorry, I didn't mean to intimate anything about your son, Flag. When he died in Corto Maltese, he died a hero.
That one looks like a discontinued dishwasher.
Okay, this is a good start. You'd think this might lead somewhere. Maybe Waller's haunted by Rick Jr.'s death. Maybe Rick Sr. suspects something. Maybe tension brews beneath the surface. Nope. Not at all. Then Rick Sr. drops this line.
He and I had a son when we were just 18. Fine young man. I joined the military mostly just to make money so I could support him. 18 years later, he joined the military because he loved our country and he wanted to make it a better place. Boy, was it an improvement on me in every way. He passed on about 2 years back.
And that's it. Let's pause. We're talking about a father whose son was killed on a mission run by Amanda Waller. A mission full of dirty secrets and avoidable bloodshed. And Rick Sr., he doesn't ask questions, doesn't demand justice, doesn't rage, doesn't even grieve. In fact, he replaces Waller as the new head of Argus, with zero narrative build-up, no arc, no politics, no reckoning. It just happens, off-screen, like the universe was bored and needed a new suit. He doesn't even pursue Waller, doesn't investigate the mission, doesn't honor his son's memory. No, he just launches into a bland revenge arc, laser-focused on killing Peacemaker. And that's it. Not the woman who sanctioned the mission, not the system that buried truth, not the ghosts that haunt the Flag name. Just Chris and his gang of misfits. And to make it worse, Rick Sr. just isn't compelling. Whereas Rick Jr. had warmth, kindness, leadership, Sr. is written like a brick wall with a terrible haircut. In Creature Commandos, his main arc centers around him getting seduced by Princess Ilana Rostovich, which, surprise, opens up a whole new list of problems. For example, how does a foreign ex-military agent sent to protect a royal figure end up sleeping with her without sparking a palace-wide scandal? Why doesn't Waller detonate his head on the spot for breaching protocol? Even worse, Rick Sr., supposedly a composed, perceptive operator, falls for Ilana's obvious manipulation. He ignores the visions from Cersei herself that Ilana is evil. He even rejects the idea that the Themyscira exists. So what does Rick Sr. do? Try to save her, stop the assassination. He doesn't even question her. He doesn't even hedge his bets. And when Clayface obliterates him in a brutal ambush, in what could have been his final moments, he doesn't think of his son. No memory, no reflection, no flashback, no animated Joel Kinnaman cameo, nothing. Instead, the scene becomes another gag, with Rick Sr. being interrogated by Eric Frankenstein like he's just some punchline instead of a grieving father.
Jack, do you remember the day we met?
Yeah,
Yeah, it was in front of Federal Hall. There were all these tourists around here. And a week later, I found you again by coincidence out in the base corridor.
Rick Sr. is written like a short-sighted, emotionally closed-off idiot who gets fridged just so the bride can get her time to shine. Again, just like Bloodsport.
First you seduced Flag to get him on your side. Then, after we captured Cersei, you suggested we kill her. But Flag, despite him being an old rube hung up on your charms, refused. So you sent one of your knights to spy on us. So your only choice was to get your friend Clayface to make it look like she wasn't who she was. You were who Cersei said you were all along, a power-mad, sadistic, narcissistic Disney princess who wants to destroy the world.
And the worst part? The show doesn't even end with Rick Flag Sr. discovering the truth about Ilana. We never see his reaction to her death or how he processes the fact that he betrayed everything he claimed to stand for. So what was the point of it all? It didn't help develop his character. No. It only existed so James Gunn could play out his military man ex-princess fantasy through his self-insert with Frank Grillo and his wife Jennifer Holland. And that's actually the whole reason as to why Rick Sr.'s hair is gray in the show versus black in the live action. And to top it off, the show even turns Rick Sr. into a joke by the end.
Damn, all it took was some hottie princess to turn Flag into a complete moron. Dudes, am I right?
Sure, John.
Apparently, in James Gunn's DC universe, the Rick Flags exist only to die, fall, or fail, so someone else can rise. And what's even more frustrating, Chris and Rick Jr. died at the same tower. Similar injuries. One shot in the throat, the other stabbed in the heart. Both had the structure Jotunheim collapse on top of them. But somehow, only one of them survived. The other, his body was never seen again. No closure. Nothing. Let's talk about Amanda Waller. In The Suicide Squad, Project Starfish makes no sense. Why does she sacrifice Team 1, including her most trusted asset, Rick Flag Jr., just to distract the Corto Maltese military? Was it really because he made a sarcastic comment about her blouse?
Send you to your death because you took a piss out of a blouse.
Yeah, you don't know Amanda Waller.
That's cartoon logic. Why not just teleport a well-assembled, stable team closer to the actual target? Their only goal was to blow up Jotunheim.
Once we're clear, we blow the tits off that thing and go home.
No need to trek across the island like it's Apocalypse Now. But instead, Team 2 is dropped far away, sleeps overnight, hikes through the jungle at dawn, finds Rick Jr. by sheer luck, then walks another 12 plus hours, exhausted, sweating, vulnerable, to finally reach the city. That is not a Black Ops mission, that's a camping trip with trauma. And her squad? Let's be honest, they're liabilities. Polka Dot Man is suicidal and mentally unstable. Cleo has zero combat experience and is barely out of her teens. King Shark would have eaten the whole squad if Cleo hadn't tamed him. Even in Creature Commandos, Waller shows that same flawed judgment.
The Weasel. It's one of the few soldiers still alive from Project Starfish in Corto Maltese, so we know it has what it takes to survive.
He didn't survive the mission. He drowned at the beach and played dead for the rest. That's not survival instincts, that's dumb luck. And what about Nina Mazursky?
She's the smartest and most reasonable of the bunch. She might be able to help you keep the rest of them in line.
Her intelligence wasn't even used. Or Cersei, a global level threat. Why is Waller, not the Amazons, responsible for containing her? This isn't the Waller we're supposed to fear. This isn't the woman who's outmaneuvered Superman and Batman in past stories. In Creature Commandos, she's almost nice. Apologetic, chill, no mind games, no manipulation. She doesn't even bring up Rick Jr.'s death to sway Rick Sr. emotionally, which would have been classic Waller. This isn't Amanda Waller anymore. This is Viola Davis being forced to play whatever tone James Gunn feels like writing that week. One week, she's a villain who'd nuke Superman. The next, she's your sarcastic government auntie.
And the effects should be minimal.
Minimal?
Consider it a free vasectomy.
She's not terrifying anymore. She's not manipulative. She's not even effective. And if this is DC, where's the tech? Where are the teleporters? The resurrection tech? Why is Peacemaker revived and not Rick? Say what you want about Cecil and Invincible, but at least he's competent.
Eventually, probably soon, the world will recognize you for the pitiful disappointment you are. You are not worthy of my respect. You are not a god. You are simply bad product.
And this isn't Amanda Waller. This is narrative amnesia in a government-issued blazer. And how is this blazer brought down? Through her daughter, who we have never met before. She betrays Christopher Smith by planting false evidence, then switches sides because his pet eagle eagerly hugged him? That's what we're calling moral clarity now? Leota Adebayo quite literally tells the world that her mother has been using supervillains for covert government ops. A claim that, while technically true, is not the sort of thing that gets handled in a press conference. It's Black Ops. This isn't Twitter drama. This is classified intelligence. The kind of thing Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman deal with behind closed doors. And yet here we are, treating Waller's entire empire like it's a scandal from Real Housewives of Bel Rave. And what are the consequences for Waller?
I thought Congress put a stop to all Task Force X activities since your daughter outed you.
Technically, Congress said Argus can't use incarcerated human beings as mission operatives any longer. But what about beings that aren't human?
Congress tells her she can't use supervillains anymore. So she just pivots. Monsters and Creature Commandos now fall under the same agency, meaning absolutely nothing has changed except for the branding. Then she just disappears, with Rick Sr. as the new director of Argus. No strategic downfall orchestrated by heroes she once manipulated. No real fallout, no trial, just gone. As if the narrative couldn't be bothered to come up with an actual exit for her. One of the most formidable characters in the DC canon got taken down by the narrative equivalent by Wi-Fi outage. A lot of audiences confuse James Gunn with being a master storyteller. But what they fail to understand is that James Gunn, like many directors working in mainstream media, is not just a storyteller. He's a brand manager. He works for a corporation. His job is to entertain, yes, but also to sell. And what sells? Shock value, crowd-pleasing arcs, marketable deaths, the illusion of depth, coded in quirk. Gunn and others like him are conditioned to write stories that seem emotionally resonant at first glance. But when you dig deeper, you realize there's no core, no emotional logic, no real weight. Just stylized trauma and characters whose arcs are sacrificed for the sake of a good trailer moment or a gut punch twist. Rick's death looks meaningful. It's well acted. It's tragic. It's got the music, slow motion, and that oh so quotable last line, Peacemaker, what a joke. But scratch the surface and what do you find? No build-up, no payoff, no consequence, no follow-up, no emotional ripple effect in the world around him. Just shock for shock's sake. And that's the trap. There's a difference between storytelling that is earned and storytelling that is calculated. There's a difference between emotional payoff and emotional manipulation. And yes, Gunn is entertaining. I've laughed at his jokes. I've loved some of his character choices. I love his music taste. His Rick Flag was a vast improvement over the Edgelord 2016 version. His Harley Quinn had more agency and freedom. He can be clever, charming, and insightful. But being entertaining doesn't automatically make you a good storyteller. It just makes you good at the game. And the game isn't about what makes the most sense. It's about what gets the most attention. And that's the thing most people don't want to admit. Because admitting it means acknowledging that sometimes the story we were moved by perhaps wasn't as meaningful as we thought. Maybe it was a product, a shiny, well-produced, beautifully acted, emotionally hollow product. Let's not kid ourselves here. Like, at all. Peacemaker didn't get an entire HBO Max show and a full redemption arc because it was the most logical or narratively earned direction. He got it because of John Cena. Because John Cena is charismatic, funny, deeply likable, and a walking PR machine. The man is a household name, a crossover success from wrestling and WWE in people's childhoods to blockbuster film. And studios know that attaching a franchise to someone like Cena guarantees attention, merch, memes, and money. I mean, just look at Cyberpunk 2077 and Keanu Reeves. Huh? I love that Peacemaker became more complex. And I love that Cena got a platform to show off his range. But let's be real, Peacemaker wasn't chosen because he had the richest character arc or the deepest emotional trauma. He was chosen because he was bankable. At least his actor was. Most people didn't like Peacemaker in the movie, and it's not just because he killed Rick. And in the process, actors like Joel Kinnaman and Idris Elba, both of whom also delivered just as deeply compelling, grounded performances, were sidelined. Their characters were either killed or quietly shelved. Not because it made sense for the story, but because the spotlight had to go to the most marketable player in the cast. Gunn knew what he was doing. He chose Cena, not because Peacemaker had the most story left to tell, but because he was the easiest to sell. And in a corporate IP sandbox, that's all that matters. This is what happens when storytelling becomes PR. The emotional arcs become dictated by casting, not by narrative merit. And characters like Rick Flag Jr., who could have led the future of Task Force X, end up discarded. Not because their stories are done, but because they don't sell headlines the way a post-credits John Cena cameo does. And Rick Flag Sr. is gifted the position of the head of Argus, not because he's competent, quite the opposite. He seems deeply incompetent.
Please, Amanda.
Amanda?
Listen to me, I'm telling you, I've met this woman. This isn't her.
Bumping uglies with someone doesn't mean you're infallibly able to know a person's character, General.
I didn't.
Oh, now don't lie to me, Flag.
But he's gifted the role anyways. Why? So that he can now appear in the second season of Peacemaker, running after him because he had killed his son. Because the revenge arc is marketable, it's easy to sell, it's the conflict that's easy for most people to digest. But what if the story was written in a way that would honor what was set up? How would I have handled the Suicide Squad in the Peacemaker series? Let's start with Peacemaker. He could still be the son of August Smith, but instead of being a cartoony white supremacist Facebook dad, August is a much more dangerous villain. Someone who's been a legitimate threat to the US for years. He indoctrinated his son into his ideology from a young age, raising him to be a weapon, but over time, Peacemaker starts to see through the lies. He's sick of killing in his father's name. He wants to make the world genuinely better, atone for his sins, for his brother, maybe even for his mother, she never gets mentioned, and for all of the people that he has killed in his father's name, for supposed peace. He wants redemption. By the time we meet him, he's already been working alone for years, now finding refuge in Amanda Waller. And when he meets Rick Flag Jr., it's huge. Chris sees a man who can be good without trying, and he wants to be like him. That admiration slowly builds into a deep bond, and Rick, seeing Chris genuinely trying to be better, starts to mentor him. Meanwhile, Bloodsport, who has a similar backstory of being a child soldier under an abusive father, clashes with Peacemaker at first, but eventually they come to understand each other. That shared trauma becomes a foundation for brotherhood. And despite Rick being a good man, he's not untouched by moral bruises from years in Black Ops. So when the team finds out the truth about Project Starfish, Rick is the one to say, "We can't let this slide." And for once, everyone listens. So now, instead of Peacemaker killing Rick over some vague robotic peace at any cost ideology, they all defy Waller together. Rick, Peacemaker, Bloodsport, Harley, Ratcatcher Dew, and even Abner, if you keep him alive, can still fight Starro, but this time they all survive. And they use the evidence to blackmail Waller into letting them go, much like in the original story. Now that gives us the perfect launch pad for the Peacemaker show. The show's premise could have revolved around Rick Jr. and his team secretly trying to take down Amanda Waller and trying to install Rick Flag Sr. as the new head of Argus. That opens the door for incredible father-son drama. Chris finds in Rick Sr. the father figure he wishes he had. Someone who actually believes in him, someone emotionally mature, steady, strong, and morally grounded. Meanwhile, August Smith is still at large, a real threat, plotting in the shadows, radicalized and bitter, aiming to take down his own son in the country that rejected him. He becomes the central villain of the season, not Butterflies. This is more personal, more grounded, and a lot more compelling, especially for a first season. Vigilante would still be in the story, but he would be jealous of the relationship between Chris and Rick Jr., trying desperately to remain Chris's best friend. But Rick Jr. is someone Chris genuinely loves. Not romantically, just deeply, soulfully. Rick encourages him, supports him, and isn't weighed down by the same toxic masculinity Chris is trying to shed. Bloodsport would also have a subplot, bonding with all of them, building toward being a better father for his daughter Tyla, and even Ratcatcher too, as an adopted daughter. If you wanted romance, you could do it with Bloodsport trying to find a good wife and mother for his family he never thought he'd have. Harcourt, Economos, and Leota would all stay in the show. They're essential. They are the inside link to Argus, the people who can leak info, provide support, and help take Waller down. I just removed the Harcourt Peacemaker romance. Not only is Chris not ready for a relationship, but Harcourt is just not the right fit for that dynamic. Focus instead on his hallucinations, his PTSD, and the comic-accurate aspect of him being haunted by the faces of everyone he's ever killed. And I'm not advocating for no comedy. I love comedy and I love camp, so here's an idea. I'd have Rick Jr. refuse to call Adrian Chase by his actual name. Like, never. He just keeps calling him things like Apricot Chimichanga, Alimony Chinchilla, Aspirin Chihuahua, Aloe Vera Crisis, Ape Chimp, anything like that. Which would infuriate Vigilante even more and create a really hilarious yet kind of emotional rivalry between the two. And Chris would now need to handle how to, deal with this. Now, Harley would still be in the show, depending on how long the episodes are and how many characters you can realistically juggle. Same with Abner. If he survives, he could be a really wholesome side addition, bringing balance to the more aggressive personalities. But that would only be possible if we finally brought back the old episode formats of our favorite shows from our childhoods. 10 to 13 episodes, all approximately 40 to 50 minutes long, something like Breaking Bad. It can still be funny, chaotic, he would just have time to emotionally breathe without the pressure of hitting a specific time mark or needing a new dramatic moment or emotional beat. It could just be. It could be funny, it could be emotional, whatever you need in the moment. And this show can still tie into Creature Commandos. Instead of making Rick Sr. a stiff figurehead, show why he's trusted. Have him see good in the monsters at Belle Rave. Offer them purpose, a second chance. Let Emilia Harcourt lead them, free from cringeworthy romance subplots with Christopher Smith. Giving the bride her own space to shine, not at the expense of fridging Flag Sr. And now this show wouldn't be just John Cena featuring James Gunn's quirky OCs. Because sure, who doesn't love good eccentric sidekicks?
Don't fuck with John Economist, motherfucker.
But that can only carry you so far. Instead, it would truly explore Task Force X, the military backbone of the DCEU, with iconic figures like Deathstroke and Deadshot, alongside lesser-known but equally fascinating characters like Osita, Bronze Tiger, Thylacina, Black Spider, and many more. Interesting allies and complex villains that are not alien COVID. We'd have grounded, compelling threats that actually matter. Because the final conflict in the first season of Peacemaker doesn't actually challenge Chris's mantra. No human being, no matter how twisted, would ever allow an alien invasion to take over the world for supposed peace or for anything like that. It was nowhere near as convincing as Invincible, when Omni-Man tried convincing his son to let the Viltrumites take over. Omni-Man's pitch is terrifying because it's almost convincing. He's not just Mark's dad, he's his hero. He's saved people, he's trained him, he's taught him to be a good person. So when he finally reveals the truth, that all of it was a long con, it shatters Mark and the viewer. It's heartbreaking, devastating. It challenges everything Mark believes about morality, family, and purpose. Now compare that to Goff talking to Chris. Chris doesn't believe in a butterfly's cause. We don't believe in it. There is no emotional weight, no inner pull, no ideology that actually tempts him. It's not a moral dilemma. It's a sci-fi info dump with a fake-out choice. So when he says no, it's not a powerful moment. It's just predictable. And also, Chris does explain that he has no issue killing aliens.
Fine, kill aliens, especially the bug ones.
Only people, yet the show gave him alien enemies, so where is the actual conflict and moral growth? In the end, he anyways decides to kill all of the aliens, so what was the point? Plus, Peacemaker has led the Suicide Squad on multiple occasions in the comics, which, surprise, the show never really acknowledges. That omission cost us so much depth. Instead of being some vigilante randomly tossed into a 30-year prison sentence, serving Waller and the government only twice, he'd be a leader with a messy past and a chance at redemption. It would really solidify his bond with Rick so much more. Now that would be a story worth telling. Season 2 of Peacemaker is dropping on August 21st. We're so close now, and only time will tell what James Gunn actually has planned. But for me, personally, I'm not expecting much. Right now, we know Rick Flag Sr. is the new director of Argus, and he's hunting Peacemaker to avenge the death of his son. He's got thousands of soldiers and likely metahumans under his command. Peacemaker has a band of misfits, some bad aim, and a pet eagle. And while they've grown to care about him a little too quickly, honestly, it's not enough to take down Rick Sr. and his entire Black Ops organization to save themselves. So, how does this conflict end, realistically? Rick Sr. is too stubborn, too much of a meathead to accept a peaceful resolution. But Peacemaker's crew? Way too underpowered to take on all of Argus. It leads me to the theory of Rick Flag Jr. being resurrected. It's been teased. Remember that photo James Gunn posted of a cryptid-like figure from behind? Everyone went bananas thinking that's Rick, and narratively it kinda makes sense. Bringing Rick Jr. back as a peace offering to Rick Sr. could be the only way to stop the war. But here's the problem, it's emotionally hollow. This isn't a resurrection born from guilt, grief, or a desire to right a wrong. It's not about honoring Rick Flag Jr.'s life. It's about survival. It's damn, Rick Sr. is going to kill us, and maybe if we resurrect his kid, he'll back off. That's not catharsis. That's damage control. And even if they don't resurrect Rick Jr., I doubt the conflict with Rick Sr. will be resolved in a truly satisfying way, because the Flags, both of them, have already been disrespected narratively, underutilized, forgotten by their so-called allies and friends, turned into tools for other characters' arcs. Their legacy has been sacrificed in favor of flashier, more marketable storytelling. And even if animated Joel Kinnaman does return alongside animated Frank Grillo in Creature Commandos, that doesn't automatically make it a good story. It's not about nostalgia, it's about substance. Because if Rick Flag Jr. is only brought back to clean up the mess the writers made, that's not justice, that's not storytelling, that's PR, and that's what Hollywood has unfortunately become. What really solidifies this point, what makes it undeniable, isn't just the fact that Rick Flag died, it's how he died, and why he had to. James Gunn has said it himself in interviews. If that drive got out, it would have led to international war. Peacemaker was trying to stop mass destruction. And I'd like to add, if that drive got out, what would have happened to Corto Maltese? How would Rick not realize that? So let's ask the real question. Why did Gunn still frame the moment like it was Rick good, Peacemaker bad? He knew Peacemaker wasn't the villain. He knew Rick wasn't a hero for blindly leaking state secrets that would have triggered global chaos. He knew this wasn't a clear-cut moral victory. So why not show that? Why not write it as a genuine ideological clash, Metal Gear style? Why not let us sit in that moral gray, where both men are right and both are wrong? Because that's not what sells. What sells is the good guy dies, the bad guy survives, the bad guy cries a little, and then the bad guy gets a redemption arc. That's an easier story, a neater one that fits inside a 30-second trailer, a TikTok clip, a YouTube reaction video. Not a complicated story, not a painful one, just one that's profitable. And the final insult, Project Starfish, the thing Rick Jr. gave his life to expose, never mattered in the end.
Flag wanted to give the drive to the press, but we just saved the whole bloody scene. We can't have it all.
It's never mentioned again. Even Superman never finds out what happened to another alien species like him. The world never learns. The hard drive stays with Bloodsport, never to be used. The mission fades into silence. Rick Flag Jr. died for a ticking time bomb that the script never even bothers to detonate. This is not Breaking Bad, where everything loops back and choices come home to roost. This is the Suicide Squad, where everything exists to serve the moment, not the meaning. James Gunn is smart, but he's not writing for permanence. He's writing for the pulse, the buzz, the brand. And it didn't stop with Rick Flag Jr. Oh no. Rick Flag Sr. was just as misused. A grieving father, a hardened war vet shaped by loss, a new moral force in the DCU? Nope. He was just another brick-headed soldier. He didn't mourn, didn't question, didn't matter. He was there to say a single emotional line about his dead son. To get seduced by a Slavic princess in the most tropey subplot imaginable. Get duped, humiliated, and nearly killed. Not because it made sense, but because it gave another character, the bride, a spotlight moment. And serve up a forced vendetta against Peacemaker, the most obvious, yet least emotionally honest target in the whole scenario. This wasn't closure, it wasn't justice, it was recycling. He wasn't written as a man, he was written as a legacy prop, Just another way to squeeze drama out of a death the narrative never respected in the first place. Just maybe that's the most James Gunn thing of all. Though I haven't seen all of his work, you don't need to in order to see the pattern. Because if there's one thing Gunn consistently gravitates toward, it's the messy characters, the broken ones, the abrasive ones, the ones who wear their trauma like ironclad armor, the morally grounded, the ones who try to do the right thing without the ego, the edge, or the chaos. They get sidelined. Richard Flagg Jr. was too stable, too principled. So of course Peacemaker, the walking contradiction with the trauma-soaked past, gets the spin-off. Rocket Raccoon gets the emotional centerpiece of Guardians Volume 3, not Peter, not Gamora, because he's the most damaged, most explosive, most haunted. Bloodsport, who's riddled with guilt and violence, becomes the new team face over Rick, not because it makes narrative sense, but because he's less clean, even if he's to never appear again. And of course, the Bride becomes the leader of Creature Commandos, not Nina Mazursky, the actual original team founder from the comics, because Nina is a scientist, calm, rational, not messy enough. Gunn doesn't hate the moral characters, look at Cleo, but he doesn't know what to do with them. He doesn't build arcs around clarity or quiet strength. He builds around chaos, edge, trauma, and the characters who act out instead of hold steady.
I'm getting this weird feeling that you're angry.
And that's why the Flaggs, both junior and senior, never stood a chance. They were too clean for a world that favors the messy, too stable for a universe that thrives unbroken, too moral for a brand that needs marketable pain. And the most marketable one is the flashiest one, very unfortunately. And this is why the Flaggs deserved better. And you know what? Peacemaker deserved better too, just as much as both of the Flagmen did. When he confronted Rick, he begged him to stand down. He didn't want to fight. And when he was forced to kill him to survive, it traumatized him. But then, Cleo runs off with the drive, and Chris pulls a gun on her, claiming that he has to kill her too, because he's thorough. So let me get this straight. He gave Rick a chance to surrender, and still hesitated to kill him even when Rick didn't back down. But Cleo, a literal kid, or at the very least a young woman, who surrenders and says, okay, take the drive, he's suddenly ready to shoot her? Not because it was in character. No. Not because he truly wanted to. Not because he needed to. But because the script needed Bloodsport to swoop in with a last-minute hero moment to save the girl, win her hearts, and cement his bond with Cleo. Even though a few minutes later, he ends up saving her again during the Starro fight anyway. So really, what was the point? The movie didn't know how to resolve the tension between Robert and Chris. Two men, both raised as child soldiers. Both hardened, broken, just trying to survive, cut from the same cloth. Instead of letting that pain create a brotherhood, they shredded it. Peacemaker deserved a redemption arc that felt earned, that grew naturally from the movie into the show. Not this. A guy who spends most of the movie being a jerk, then stabs someone we love, and only gets retroactively redeemed because the TV show had to fix it. For John Cena, and the TV show never even bothered to address that he nearly shot somebody else that we love. However, Chris, he deserved Rick, he deserved Robert, two men who could have truly understood him, helped him heal. Not just Adrian Chase, a chaos gremlin who loves him but can't challenge him emotionally.
If I find out someone murdered an innocent person, or sold somebody heroin, or did some graffiti, and I kill that person with my bare hands, their eyeballs popping out of their skulls, you think that gives me pleasure?
No.
Well, it does. It gives you pleasure too, Peacemaker. That's because we're born killers. What separates us from other killers is we only kill bad people. Usually. Unless there's a mistake. Now, do I sound like a fucking maniac?
I'm not saying Adrian shouldn't be there. He should. But Chris needs more than someone who worships him. He needs brothers. And he deserved a real love story.
To grieve deeply is to have loved fully. Open your heart to the world as you have opened it to me, and you will find every reason to keep living in it.
Not James Gunn's emotionally constipated OC of his wife Jennifer Holland.
I don't think I really care about the dev of peace. I just think I said that because I don't want to kill people anymore.
No offense, but we could be taking on dozens of those things tomorrow. I'm not sure right now is the best time for you to go all Mahatma on us. So when we first met, I said I thought you were a total piece of shit, but I don't think that anymore.
No?
85% a piece of shit, maybe. But the rest of you is...
But someone gentle, grounded, nurturing. Someone who can laugh with him, not at him. Chris didn't need to kill Rick to grow. Just like Bloodsport didn't need a body count to realize there was still good in him. Chris could have changed just by being there, watching the suffering of the people in Corto Maltese, seeing Waller's manipulation firsthand, learning what it means to protect, not obey. That alone could have been his arc. But instead we're told he grows because he killed Rick. Except he didn't kill Rick out of ideology. He killed him because he had a bomb in his neck and Rick was about to expose something that could cause global disaster. It wasn't about belief. It was about survival. And even then, he hesitated, he pleaded. So how is that the emotional cornerstone for his redemption? It's not. It was just trauma dressed up as depth. This isn't the same as Dowd from Dishonored. Dowd spent his life killing corrupt nobles, thinking he was balancing the scales, doing some kind of good. So when he was hired to assassinate Empress Jessamine Caldwin, he didn't hesitate. He didn't see her as different, just another name, another rich ruler in a broken system. But after he killed her, that's when it all changed. He felt it. The weight of her death, the consequences, the grief, 6 months of watching the world fall into chaos because of one single choice. That's when it hit him. Jessamine wasn't like the others, and maybe none of them deserved to die the way he made it feel so easy. His whole belief system shattered. The mark the outsider gave him, the sense of purpose, it collapsed under the truth. That's what real guilt looks like. That's what a real redemption arc starts from. Chris isn't Dowd. He didn't kill Rick because he believed in what he was doing. He didn't even kill him with confidence. He killed him because he was trapped, terrified, and had no way out. And the guilt he feels afterward, it's not transformative. It's just residue. Dowd saw the cracks and changed before the credits rolled. Chris was handed a second chance after the movie ended, retroactively, in a show that tried to make trauma look like character development. And while I would have preferred for both of them to survive, if Rick Flag Jr. had to die, then his death should have meant something to Chris. When the boss sacrificed herself, it was to restore balance to the world, leaving behind everything for the man she mentored like a son. And Big Boss, he spent the rest of his life trying to understand what her sacrifice truly meant. To her, to him, to the world. He spiraled into villainy, chasing that meaning, haunted by it. But 50 years later, when he finally stands at her grave again, he doesn't talk about redemption. He doesn't talk about himself. He talks about peace, about the meaning of her sacrifice. The script pretends that Chris killing Rick was his Big Boss moment. But what did that moment mean to him? Did it shift his values? Did it reshape his mission? Did it leave a scar that actually changed him?
Instead, I didn't care how many people I needed to torture and kill again. Lately, I'm just thinking I'm a fucking maniac. Peace, I just think I said that because I don't want to kill people anymore.
There's no meaning in Rick's death. He died because he was impulsive and emotional. And instead of unpacking that, instead of building a real arc, the story decides that Chris's redemption is slaughtering an alien species and killing his dad. That's it. Words without action are just noise. He says he doesn't want to kill anymore. But what does that actually lead to? What does it change? He says he's changed. But what does he do with that pain? Where's the moment he puts his new ideals into action? It just never comes. And look, I get it. Peacemaker has only one season so far, and maybe there's more to come. But when your teaser trailer for season 2 is already diving into multiverse territory, that's not a sign of a story that's evolving. It's a sign of a franchise that's running out of ideas. And then you've got Jennifer Holland, one of the main cast members, practically admitting that the show might not even survive much longer. And honestly, I think we can all see why. And how is he supposed to recover from this, when even his own love interest cannot meet him emotionally halfway? And when his supposed best brother, Adrian Chase, is Deadpool with none of the emotional intelligence. Chris didn't need trauma to grow. He needed brotherhood. He needed people like Rick and Robert, people cut from the same cloth, to help him stitch himself back together. But Gunn didn't give him that. He gave him pain and called it peace.
Just being alive in 3 hours.
Okay, look, speak for yourself.
And Harley? She didn't deserve all that pain either. Gunn killed Boomerang and Javelin, then exploited her need for love through Luna, had her tortured for hours on end, refused to let Rick hug her back, for a gag. Then he killed Rick, her only real friend, which gave her deep grief. And still, she wasn't allowed to honor him by keeping or even protecting the drive. Just pain, grief, shrug, joke. And Abner? He didn't deserve that either. A man who spent his whole life weighed down by depression, self-loathing, and suicidal thoughts, only to finally feel joy and die instantly for a laugh. Same with Bloodsport. While I really enjoyed his character, he was watered down from the comics. A man broken by war, government manipulation, and systemic violence. It made him a tired, grumpy dad with a phobia of rats and beef with John Cena over gun size. That's what their rivalry comes down to. I shoot better than you. It's a literal pissing contest. In the comics, their dynamic is so much deeper. Bloodsport doesn't believe in peace. He doesn't believe in anything anymore. He's a man who's seen the cost of war and knows the system that keeps weaponizing broken people like him. In the movie, all we really get is he shot Superman with the kryptonite bullet and then nothing. No context, no reasoning, not even an ounce of his inner conflict. Meanwhile, Peacemaker, comic Peacemaker, is desperately clinging to his delusion that peace is possible through violence. He wants it to mean something. He needs it to, because if it doesn't, then he's just a killer. So when these two clash in the comics, it's not about marksmanship, it's about ideology. It's existential. Bloodsport sees through the lie. Peacemaker needs the lie to survive. But the movie strips that all away. No tension, no complexity, no real commentary on who these men are or what they believe in. Just quips and CGI bullets. And while I do want them to become true, I'd die for you and kill for your brothers in this version, it has to start from something deeper. So in the end, it all loops back around. Every single one of these characters, from Peacemaker to both of the Flags, to Bloodsport, to all of James Gunn's own OCs, they all deserved better. And now, Peacemaker's second season is releasing soon. What will happen? Will Chris finally reckon with the choice he made over 2 years ago in Corto Maltese? Will Rick Sr., a man broken by revenge, come to accept peace? Will Rick Jr., the leader of Task Force X, return somehow? Through maybe that shaman? We don't know. Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure. If James Gunn wants his new DC universe to work, he needs to remember the legacy he's already broken. As I have mentioned at the beginning of this video, I am not a Zack Snyder fan. I haven't even watched his DC work to critique it properly. This is just about James Gunn. He writes for entertainment, so did Looney Tunes. That doesn't mean we stop analyzing the story just because someone laughed at a toilet joke. This is the DC universe we're talking about. A world where tone, world building, and character consistency actually matter. You're not making a quirky indie film. You're not writing inside the Gunverse. You're writing inside a mythology that includes Superman, Lex Luthor, Amanda Waller, Batman, and the legacy of Task Force X. A mythos built on the idea that actions have consequences and characters grow through conflict and sacrifice. So yes, we expect things to actually make sense. This isn't Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 4. This isn't some self-aware parody. This is supposed to be the launch pad for an entire cinematic universe. If the writing wants me to feel something, then I will absolutely hold it to that standard. Because if it's all meant to be mindless fun, then stop pretending these deaths and betrayals are emotionally complex moments. You can't have it both ways. That's not a defense, that's an excuse. And frankly, it's a disservice to the audience. Comic books, good comic books, have been exploring themes of power, morality, and consequence long before James Gunn ever picked up a camera. This is not about being against fun. Both Marvel and DC have always played across a spectrum of tones. You can go from The Dark Knight to the Lego Batman movie and still be in the same universe.
No.
You can compare Hulk 2008 to Deadpool, and guess what? Both work because they're consistent with themselves.
What's Juggernaut got that I don't have? Don't you say legs! I know you're gonna say legs! Legs! Still hurts to hear out loud. What is that? That's not a real rope!
So no, the issue isn't that James Gunn brings humor into the DCU. The issue is that he bends the world to suit the joke, and then expects the joke to carry emotional weight, with no setup, no follow-through, and no narrative logic. It's one thing to put your spin in a story, creativity is welcome. But not all jokes are created equal. Some of Gunn's humor is sharp, irreverent, and fitting, but a lot of it, it's just gross. Disgusting for the sake of being disgusting.
Partner of the chick I had sex with. You guys know? One who was really into having sex with me. She came like 4 times.
We know who she is. We don't need to know how much she enjoyed having sex with you.
There's a difference between being edgy and being juvenile. And when those jokes come at the expense of actual character development, and when the tone whiplashes from trauma to toilet humor with no narrative justification, it stops being subversive and starts being sloppy. And to end this on a positive note, I don't hate James Gunn. Not at all. In fact, he's the reason I finally got into DC. For years, I felt like it would happen eventually, and his Peacemaker was what finally pulled me in. So thank you, James Gunn, for making me to care about this mythos. But when I love something deeply, I'll critique it just as deeply. That's my love language. And to any James Gunn stans who'll comment something along the lines of, "This is an L take, you just don't get it."
Sorry.
No, I'm not.
Go. Fuck. Yourself.
Flag!